laws, the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, bridging spiritual insight and practical strategy. Of course, one of his advocacy, no other than Mr. Caleb Matthews.
Hello. Very good to be here, Daniel. Thank you very much for the invitation. Pleased to be with you and your audience today.
Welcome, Mr. Caleb on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. I am Caleb Matthews with the C-Link. I am a motivational speaker, dream interpretation consultant, and spiritual strategist. And I love what I'm doing. And I get to live in Mexico 6 months of the year and 6 months of the year in Canada, in the best of both worlds, so that I never have to experience winter ever again. I'm really excited about the life that I'm building right now.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Caleb. Thank you. Yeah. So today let's talk about the DNA of design. So tell us, the DNA of design suggests there's a fundamental or replicable code to great design. What, in your view, are the essential base pairs or immutable principles in this DNA and opposed to the stylistic genes of the change trend?
I would say within the DNA of design recipe, as you will, is the trichotomous worldview. And what I mean by that is the trichotomous worldview of spirit, soul, and body. We're made up of three parts. That is my conviction and my belief. As we look back into Genesis, the book of Genesis in the Bible, that talks about man and woman being created in the image of God, in God's likeness. And God is spirit, and also God is flesh as well too, as manifested in the life of Jesus Christ. And that means that with that spirit, soul, and body construct, we also are made in God's image, and therefore we have that DNA of design as well too.
The DNA of design. We often equate design with how something looks. How does your concept of DNA push you to see design as structural, functional, or experiential blueprint that operates beneath the surface?
Part of the blueprint that operates beneath the surface is looking back to where we've come from. I call this the I of R principle, the early years of entrepreneurship, of renovation, or the I of I principle, innovation, renovation. Both of those are interchangeable. And the best example that I can describe in this moment right now would be when I was a boy, probably around 6, 7, 8 years old. And one of my favorite things to do as a child was communicate and read books on the front lawn to, drumroll please, an audience of the neighbor's dog. I would sit down on the front lawn with a children's book and read to the dog, and the dog would just sit there. His name was Ace. He was a black Labrador, very playful, fun dog that the children would play with in the neighborhood that we would play with. He would chase after the tennis balls down the street, but every often he would sit down on the front lawn with me and listen to me carefully as I instructed him of this story, this simple story, but he was a captive audience. And from that young age, communication was really something that was built in my DNA of design, my specific framework, because some people like communicating, like myself, other people like music, some like athletics, some like music, but every person has that intricacy in their DNA of design, and we can look into our early years for clues with those principles.
Clues. We want the clues for principles. People, is the DNA you describe universal, applicable to a chair, a software interface, and the city park, or it does to mutate into different species of design? Can you trace a common thread, Mr. Caleb?
Common thread, absolutely. Common thread that we have within our DNA of design is that we are all built for a specific purpose on the earth. We don't know how much time we have or how long the time is going to be, but one thing we can be certain of, and that is we all have a specific design that we have been created with, that we are to fulfill and walk out in our lives, no matter what country, no matter what nation, no matter what cultural ethnicity or background. We all have something that is within our DNA at a cellular level. Scientifically, there is not anybody like you or I or our audience listening right now to this podcast that is exactly like the person next to them, the person next to us. Daniel, I'm not 100%, like you, and you're not 100% like me, and so forth and so on with our audience. We can learn from each other, but there's only one original blueprint, and that is you, and that is me.
Mhm. Original because God created us unique and
Yes.
different. So let's talk about the process and methodology, Mr. Caleb. What is your process for sequencing the DNA of an existing successful design? Is it forensic analysis of user interaction, material choices, or historical context, or something else?
My perspective on this is going back to what we spoke in the beginning, which is spirit, soul, and body construct. And that is we have a human avatar, our body, we have a mind, will, and emotions, and we have a spirit, that internal engine, that unseen factor that drives us. Some people call it God, some people call it higher power, some people call it spirit or energy or positive light. But whatever name you attribute towards it, for me, myself, I attribute it as God. When one is walking in their full DNA of design, or at least on the path towards pursuing it, one is engaging with the spirit, soul, and body, not just the soul and the body. Because in our Western culture, especially, we've been taught that only what we see, feel, taste, smell, touch, and experience within our physical construct is worth pursuing. But that's only part of the story. The deeper layer is taking a census of our senses and reaching into the unseen where the spiritual is, and bridging that gap between spirit and the soul, which means that we have to engage our spirit by our soul and command our soul, speak to our soul to engage with our spirit. Only then can we be propelled towards a path towards discovering our true DNA of design.
Interesting, Mr. Caleb. And in biology, DNA mutates for adaptation. How does good design DNA allow for or even encourage innovation and evolution without losing its core integrity?
Mm, the art of reinventing oneself comes to my mind. It's a principle that my father and his father also taught him, which is being able to reinvent ourselves on the fly. And that is a lesson I've carried with me as an entrepreneur, starting at a young age, all the way up into my adult years. And something that I encourage our audience to pursue as well when it comes to the context of our DNA of design. Be willing to reinvent yourself. Be open to the mystery and to the hand of God and to the path of the unexpected. But don't lose your core and your core pillars of your existence and your convictions. And that is, don't go against your conscience, because to go against conscience is neither right nor safe, as the great Martin Luther once said. So keep your conscience, keep your integrity intact, but at the same time, be open to the wind of the spirit, the wind of the unseen, because that's where the hand of God can move in my life, in your life, in our lives, when we're open like sails to the wind of the winds of change. Be open, and good things will continue to manifest and develop within your DNA of design.
Yes, be open to everything, people. Does the DNA of a design include an ethical standard? For example, how are principles of sustainability, accessibility, or well being woven into a fundamental code rather than added as an afterthought?
It has to be a part of our day by day walk. And if it isn't, it's just a map, it's just a code book, it's just a set of instructions or rules. And that's really what religion is, isn't it? Religion is a
Mhm.
set of rules, but when it comes to an engagement of relationship with the aspects and this construct that God's created us with, spirit, soul, and body, that's when it becomes a lifestyle and an ecosystem that continues to evolve and move with us, as opposed to just being a set of worldly constructs. Because it says in the book of Romans in the Bible, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be renewed by the transforming of your mind. So there's constantly a renewing process that happens as we walk in the DNA of our design, spirit, soul, and body, within that full construct of how God created us. So it's not just codes, it's not just elements, but it's applicable principles that we can apply to our life by walking in the true DNA of our design.
Mr. Caleb, let's talk about the application and impact. Can flawed or harmful design be traced back to errors or mutations in their foundational DNA? Can you give an example of a common design failure and the DNA level mistake that caused it?
A DNA design failure is when we put on somebody else's design. And a perfect example of that would be the peer pressure that we receive, that you and I, that all of us receive on a day-by-day basis by the world, by our culture around us, by social media, that says, oh, well, in order for you and I to be successful, to be a good entrepreneur, a good leader, somebody who is really a success in life, we have to do it the same way that, and then just name all the successful people that are around us, like, Grant Cardone and Kim Kardashian and Roger Federer and Cristiano Ronaldo and Tom Brady. Like, I'm just going along some examples I can think of in Hollywood and entertainment and athletics, but they have their own path, no different than we have our own path. And what happens in the DNA cellular level of our human construct when we take on somebody else's DNA, it becomes an alien birthright. And what that means is that is an inheritance or a birthright that was never meant to be our own. It's like when somebody hijacks, like a computer gets hijacked and just taken over by viruses, right? Well, the DNA of that computer has been taken over by viruses. In the same way, on a cellular level within our own construct, if we try to be somebody else and deny our DNA of design, that's going to manifest. A perfect example for me in my life is recently, 3 years ago, I came out of the 9-to-5 corporate world after 10 years, and I was good at it. I was very good at sales. I could have stayed there for the rest of my life, but that would have been putting on an alien birthright for me, an alien construct, because though I was good at my job in sales and telecom and being at the top of my game, I was not fulfilled. I was not happy. I was not at peace. And when you're not at peace and when you are just in a place of tension, that's going to manifest through stress. It's going to manifest at a cellular level to where you're not going to get full alignment to where you're supposed to be. And that's just a brief example I wanted to share. But audience, just ask yourself this question. Am I putting on my DNA design, or am I putting on somebody else's alien birthright that does not belong to me?
Alien birth. Well, interesting, Mr. Caleb. A key part of a modern design is user centricity. How does its DNA of the human user integrated with the DNA of design itself? Are they intertwined?
Yes, there's a collaboration, and we have to go back to the beginning to be able to see the beginning of that partnership, of that co-laboring, because that's what it says in Genesis. It says in the scriptures in the Bible in Genesis that God walked with man in the cool of the day, man and woman in the garden, and it was a side-by-side partnership between the ultimate DNA of design, which is the manifest presence of God, and then our own DNA. And there is a partnering with that. And in Eden, there was no separation between God and man, between mankind and God. And when the fall happened, there is that separation of being separate from the nature and the character of God. And our world today, we are still fighting to return back to Eden many thousands of years later. And the good news is that we have been restored to Eden. For those who want to make that choice and that decision to be aligned to their original design, there is an answer. And that answer is Jesus, because Jesus showed the way for us to return back to Eden by giving access through his death and resurrection. And that's an option, and it's an acceleration path, should you will, because God honors his design, his human design, and those who he's created in his image. And the giftings and callings of God are without repentance. So he will honor a gift in someone's life, even if they're not walking with God. But when one has committed themselves to God, then one can access the full riches of what's in Eden again. And that is walking in God's spirit, most of all. Spirit, soul, and body. And that's really what it means to be restored to Eden.
How does this framework apply to designing intangible things like services, policies, or organizational cultures? Can they have a design DNA too?
Yes. There can be a design within organizations, within groups, within clusters of of influence in places. And when an organization is walking in its DNA of design, in the original purpose that it was created, then it can reach its full impact. When an organization no longer serves its original mandate, its core mandate, then it can also do what we talked about before, and that is put on an alien birthright. And to give an example of this, the United States was founded by the founding fathers, of course, with the Constitution that all men are created equal under God, all men and all women are created equal under God. And how that was hijacked was in, the American Civil War happened because of America moving away from its original DNA of design, which was equality, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And of course, we know black slaves were not given human rights. And that was not what the original founding fathers had in mind when they created the Constitution. And much of the war that happened, in fact, most of the war that happened between North and South, between the Union and the Confederacy, the American Civil War that cost the nation thousands of lives, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, was on this fight of all men and women are created equal, not meant to be servants or slaves of human property. And that's an example of how, bigger than an organization, a nation can even lose its DNA of design if it moves into an alien birthright. But part of the good news is that nations and corporations and groups can still turn the Titanic. They can turn the ship and not crash on the iceberg to the bottom of the sea, metaphorically speaking.
Hmm, definitely. So, Mr. Caleb, as a generative AI begins to create design, is it working with stylistic patterns or could be thought to understand and manipulate the underlying DNA you describe? What would that mean for human designers?
Well, AI, if left unchecked and left out of control, could potentially be very dangerous because it removes that human element, that God created element within society. Now, AI, I think, is a great tool. Hence, I use it a lot when I'm creating content and when I'm preparing some things that I want to speak on, as well as looking for ideas and research and studying and inspiration. But AI, in my opinion, should never be replacing human dynamics as a whole, because when that happens, we can get into some very dangerous territory. But if we walk side to side with AI as a tool, as opposed to something that rules over us or something that we disregard, then we can be in a healthy place. But in my opinion, if AI, we depend on it too much or not enough, neither extreme is good. But it can be good if we use it as a tool.
Hmm, definitely. As a tool, people, as something that you will help you to be better. to be excellent.
Yeah.
Is design DNA culturally specific? Do Scandinavian minimalists share an ornate Indian textile share any foundational DNA, or are they expressions of completely different cultural genomes?
The answer to that is both. That is
Mm.
where I believe the answer is. They can be both at the same time. And what I'm saying on that regard is yes, they are different as you describe, but also similar in the fact of an equal playing field and a table of opportunity. And that is to be able to walk and pursue the path to which they've been given. We've been given as cultures, as peoples, as by God, this window of time, this precious vial of time that we have to steward to be able to walk out our DNA of design. There are many things that you and I, Daniel, right now, and our audience could be doing differently. This small example of listening to a podcast like Abstract Essay, but that's just an example in a microcosm of life. If we take life as an example of choosing, because many people do choose their career path or what they're going to do to express their gifts and their things that they've been created with, that those are choices as well. Every single culture, every single nation, every single person, man and woman, we all have an equal playing field, regardless of race and ethnicity, of this choice to manifest that DNA design in the earth.
Mr. Caleb, what is the strongest counter argument to your thesis or your advocacy? How would you address a designer who says, great design is alchemy and magic?
I would say to that person asking a question is where do you believe that creativity comes from? Do you think it just comes from your own human psyche or your thoughts, or does it come from something deeper? How do you explain how the universe is held up in such an individual and unique way, where all the planets and all the stars and all of the galaxies are working in cohesion with one another? How would you explain that? How would you explain that every single person has their own unique construct and design? How would you explain that? And that would be my challenge to those who question. And to answer your question there, Daniel, the greatest opposition and the greatest battle that I believe that we are fighting today is not on battlefields between armies. It's not even online and social media between chat groups and individual accounts that argue. The greatest battle is an invisible problem that manifests in the natural. And that is the battle between the trichotomous worldview and the dichotomous worldview. The dichotomous worldview is the main opposition to the message I'm talking about with DNA of design. That is, oh, there's only a physique, there's only the physical, and there's only the mental. Only anything that comes in my brain or my body is what's real, and anything else is not real. That's the main opposition. But that's the world that we live in today. It's either those who believe in a grand design and a creator and a God behind it, or those that don't. There really is no in between. There's no Switzerland on this topic, in my perspective.
Well, Mr. Keller, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season this year, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in its sixth season as well, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in a fourth season, a Science 101, Sex 101, third season, on my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Bible Verses 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and the newest Motivation 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Caleb, if readers could remember, or viewers remember and apply just one principle of the DNA design, what would you want to be and how would it change their perspective immediately?
The one principle I would want viewers and listeners to apply is a bridging and a connection within your trichotomous human framework that God created you with, your spirit, your soul, and your body. So begin practically. How does one do that? Well, start instructing your soul by your spirit to see and to acknowledge and to hear. Start talking to your soul as if it's a person standing right in front of you, like me and Daniel are talking right now. Instruct your soul to arise and take a census of your senses, and don't just look in the natural with your body and your mind, but allow your spirit to instruct and govern your soul and your body. And ultimately your spirit, lay that, your spiritual construct of your being, lay that before God and say, God, and just speak to God as if he's your friend in the room with you, saying, God, help me make sense of the alignment of my spirit, soul, and body. Everything that you created me with in your image, help me make sense of my purpose, my individual purpose. And do that exercise and just speak to your soul as if you're speaking to a person, and speak to God also as if you're speaking to your friend, and watch what happens when you embrace your spirit, soul, and body framework and don't just rely on your mind and your body. Don't be dichotomous, be trichotomous, because that's the way God created you.
Yes, so Mr. Caleb Matthews, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Abstract Essay?
Sure. And thank you, Daniel, for having me on the show. CalebMatthews.net, www.calebmatthews.net. You can find more on me, the C-Link. It's all about helping people discover their DNA of design, seeing the links through dreams of the night, alignment, history, and purpose-driven leadership. That's it. That's me from Caleb Matthews from C-Link, saying ciao, and thanks for listening.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Caleb Matthews, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering DNA of leadership will rise. So, Mr. Caleb, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.